The NFLandU podcast.
Welcome to the first episode of the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, Hayden Vassar, and on this podcast, our mission statement is quite simple. We are going to look at every single NFL team and give them a fair and honest representation. If you are a fan of that team, or if you're not a fan of that team, I hope you come away with fresh eyes on any given team that we talk about on this podcast. So teams that may not get a lot of national coverage, say, for instance, like the Tennessee Titans, for example, we'll talk about them a fair deal, just like we'll talk about a team like the New England Patriots. I want to give everybody as much coverage as I possibly can. Now, before we get into today's show, I want to first introduce myself, try to build some kind of repertoire with a fan base here. My name's Hayden, and I love the NFL. I've been following the NFL since 2008, so about 11 years, and it's my favorite sport. So all my Twitter timeline is consumed with just NFL stuff, really. And I always wanted to do something involving football. I never quite knew what it was. And when I was in my first 2 years of college, I thought it was sports broadcasting, but I told myself that I was very self-conscious in my broadcasting voice, and I wasn't confident in it. I told myself it doesn't matter what your broadcasting voice is as long as you can write good. So I thought sports writing would be the thing. So when I got to Eastern Michigan, which is the college I currently attend, I joined the student newspaper and wrote for the sports section for a number of months. I even got promoted to senior sports writer, and I covered everything from football to basketball to baseball to track and field to even rowing. Even won a couple of awards for my writing, but it got to a point where I just no longer found joy in writing, and it got to a point where it was an active drag on me. And I remember telling my family that one thing that I really didn't like about the writing process was if a team is bad and I know they're bad and everybody knows they're bad, I wasn't allowed to write that they're bad. Even though a team would be horrifically bad, and that bothered me. If a team is bad, I want to be able to say they're bad. And in broadcasting, you have more, I don't want to say free reign, but you've got more leverage to do so than in writing. In writing, you were taught to let the facts speak for themselves, but I want to say a team's bad. And on this podcast, if a team plays bad, I'm gonna say they're bad. Like we're about the Chicago Bears. So in this podcast, I want to be fair and honest to every team, but I'm also going to be opinionated. If your team plays bad or does something stupid, I'm going to call them out. I don't want this to turn into a hot take opinionated show like something on ESPN or Fox Sports, because I'm not really like that. I want to give fair and nuanced takes to everybody. So, without further ado, I guess that pre-ramble was enough of a monologue. Let's get into a recap of the Bears and Packers game that just wrapped up about 20 minutes ago. So Green Bay won 10-3 in a absolute slobber knocker. I mean, if you weren't watching this game, you missed out greatly. So a grand total of 13 points were scored in this game, and there were 17 punts. And listen, I'm not going to knock you if you like defensive football. I like a good old-fashioned defensive football show. But there is never a good game. Never, ever a good game where there are more punts than points. If you have more punts than points in a game, the game is not good. And this game was not good for a number of reasons. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. The game started off fairly slow. Both teams really struggling on offense, but the Bears' defense looked like they were picking up where they left off last year. Just dominant. Just flat out dominant. They were pushing Aaron Rodgers and the Packers around like it was nobody's business. So we're going through the first quarter, and the Bears, they're completing some drives. They weren't really completing drives, but they were getting some first downs, and you're like, okay, and the drive would stall, and you're like, okay, I could see maybe something's there, and then they would kick a field goal, which was a fantastic thing by Eddie Pinheiro. I openly celebrated because I don't know about you guys, but I have been actively following the Bears kicker news I'm not a Bears fan, but I've been following it because I thought it was the most underrated storyline of the offseason. The Bears' relentless pursuit of a kicker, and he only made one kick tonight. But you know what? For one moment, Chicago Bear fans, they had a kicker. And I'll give them that. For one moment, they had a kicker. So the entire first quarter, the Rodgers regime is getting just the holy hell beaten out of him by the Bears defense. He's getting sacked relentlessly. The offense looks out of whack, and Rodgers can't get anything going. By the end of the first quarter, this is an actual stat, by the end of the first quarter, the Green Bay Packers had a grand total of negative 12 yards. Total yards. Negative 12. I get defenses being dominant, but that's a bit more than a defense being dominant. That is an offense just not doing things right. Now, everything after that, the first quarter is going great for Bears. They're up 3-0. Everything's going great. Everything after that, it went downhill. As soon as the second quarter started is when Aaron Rodgers caught fire. Immediately on a play-action pass, Rodgers drops back and hits Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I know I am butchering that name, and please forgive me, for 47 yards downfield. And then a couple plays later, he hits Jimmy Graham in the end zone for a touchdown, an 8-yard touchdown pass to score the game's only touchdown. Now, if you go back and watch the highlight of this play, I am still not entirely sure who Rodgers is throwing that to because he's throwing it to the back corner of the right end of the end zone where there are two guys there, and it really looks like Rodgers is just throwing it up. And he looks like he's going to a second wide receiver, but Jimmy Graham just happened to be there and catch it, which it turned out great, but it really looked like Rodgers was not throwing it there. But after that little offensive output, then it just went back into this defensive slugfest of, oh, we're going to punt it, oh, we're going to punt it, oh, we're going to punt it. And all this time, Chicago's still not getting anything done. And the boo birds start to come out just before halftime. And at first, they were a little quiet, then they got a little louder. But as soon as it came back from the half and Chicago could not do anything on that first drive right out of halftime, I'm telling you that the boos that came down from Chicago as I watched it on my TV, it legitimately sounded like a Philadelphia Eagle crowd that at peak anger. That is what it sounded like. And I'm a Cowboys fan, so I know how bad those boos can be from a Philadelphia Eagle crowd. It sounded just like that in Chicago. Chicago fans were irate over what they were seeing, and rightfully so. I mean, that offense just looked pathetic. And as the game started to go on, it even started to look conservative for some reason. And I'm not sure why. You're in a 7-3 ball game, and the whole game is right there in front of you. You have no reason to be conservative and do these little dunk down passes on 3rd and 6. Open it up. Let it fling a little bit. And, well, they did start to let it fling as the game started to go on more, but the problem was Trubisky started missing wide open wide receivers. If I remember correctly, it was in the third quarter when he missed Allen Robinson down the left-hand sideline. He just didn't see him. I mean, Allen Robinson was wide open. Wide open, and Trubisky just didn't see him and just took off for a run. And then there was a play later, I think in the fourth quarter, where Trubisky had a wide receiver on the sideline, and if he just throws the ball just a little bit lower, it's a first down. But he completely oversails him. And I really think that is something we saw a lot last year, where Trubisky didn't see guys on routes or missed open guys. It just feels like we got the worst of Trubisky tonight. This was the worst of Trubisky. And I know it's week 1, so you can't really kill the guy, but that was really bad. And I know it's not all his fault. I know the Packers defense played really great. They got 5 sacks, and I really think Mike Pettin, their defensive coordinator, who I really, really like, I think he's got something there. That defense looks very interesting to me. I'm really interested to see where they go. But for the Bears, they just could not figure it out. And that's so interesting because Allen Robinson, their wide receiver, who is a very talented wide receiver. Let's see what his stat line was again. It was Yeah, he finished 7 catches for 102 yards. It felt I couldn't believe it when I read that stat line. I'm like, really? There's no offense going on, but Allen Robinson somehow got to 102 yards, which is sad because I feel like he's never had gotten to play with a real quarterback that could maximize his talent. First it was Blake Bortles in Jacksonville, and now it's Trubisky. I'm not saying Trubisky's a bad quarterback, but imagine what somebody like Robinson could do with like a Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying, that guy's got real talent. He's got real talent. So on the opposite side of Robinson, we got... So towards the end of the fourth quarter, it's 10-3 after Green Bay kicks a field goal. And, I mean, the Bears are still in it. It feels like they're out of it, but they're very much in it. They're just one solid drive away from tying this game. And it felt like they had it right around the 2-minute warning. They're in the red zone, and Trubisky drops back, and for the love of God, he is staring down Allen Robinson the entire way in the left corner of the end zone. I mean, from the moment the ball is hiked, the entire time that Trubisky has the ball, he is staring daggers directly at Allen Robinson. And when he throws it, it's into triple coverage, and it gets picked off by Alan Amos from Green Bay, who used to be a Chicago Bear. He was with the Bears last year. So if anybody knows a Trubisky tendency, it's going to be Amos. And I thought the game was done there. I thought that was a wrap because I feel Green Bay is more going to be a run-focused team this year, so they're just going to run out the clock. Well, then Matt LaFleur and the Packers decide to throw it a couple times, and that goes nowhere, so the Bears get the ball back. And that goes nowhere, and Trubisky gets sacked on 4th and 8. Just a gut punch to a brutal night for the Bears, a team that a lot of people liked coming into the season. I thought their defense was going to be great. I still had questions about their offense. And this just feels like confirmation bias because the Bears' defense was so great tonight and their offense was just so bad. But on the flip side of looking at the Bears, you see the Packers, who had offensive troubles at first. It felt like kind of like LaFleur was micromanaging everything. But then as soon as the second quarter started, they just started freewheeling a bit, just kind of ad-libbing just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. And it worked. And you saw them sprinkle in a bit more of that throughout the game. And I feel like there's still a lot of kinks in that Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers relationship. But I think they can work it. I think they maybe can work it. That defense looks good. I'm really interested to see where they go there. But this is a really big win for Green Bay. This is a big, big win for Green Bay. Because Green Bay's next 5 out of their next 6 games, 5 out of their next 6 are at home. Green Bay could realistically be an undefeated team at the end of this next 6-game stretch. Because their only road game out of the next 6 is at Dallas, a team they have dominated the last few years in major situations. So I really think Green Bay has a chance to ride the schedule and be really good. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win all their games. I'm just saying that this big road win on the road, it may have been ugly, and yeah, it was, and nobody's really happy with how anybody performed tonight. You just take the W. You just take the W. And so Green Bay and Chicago get the little mini bye, a couple extra days off, and Chicago really needs it to work on that offense. But I really think that week 1 is not going to be indicative of the rest of the season. I mean, look at week 1 last year when Green Bay beat Chicago and Chicago won the division. I'm just saying, it's not going to be indicative. It's just a start. Everybody's rusty at this point. Everybody's rusty. Moving on to the other major news out of this day. Antonio Brown. There's no easy way to segue into this story. There's really not. If you haven't been keeping up with the Antonio Brown saga, we're going to catch you up in just a quick second on that. But the news that broke around midday today was that Antonio Brown got into a heated altercation with the Raiders general manager Mike Mayock, and that Antonio Brown had threatened to punch Mayock in the face and then punted a ball and said, "Find me for that." And this apparently happened in front of the entire team at practice. Now, this is the latest issue in a very long, arduous, ongoing situation with Brown and the Raiders. It just feels like it's reached a boiling point to where I don't know if this thing is fixable anymore. Where things have just gotten so bad and volatile, I think it might just be best for the Raiders to, cut bait and run. And that's sad because Antonio Brown, I mean, like him or not, and I understand hating him for his antics off the field, Antonio Brown is one of the best wide receivers the league has had the last few years. That fact is not debatable. He is a tremendous, tremendous athlete. And just to see how this has spiraled down to a point where Antonio Brown realistically may not play a single down for the Raiders at all. Not just a game, at all. And after the reports of this altercation happening, we don't think Antonio Brown's at the facility, then General Manager Mike Mayock made a statement. He's not here today. That's all I'm saying about it. Okay, so he's not at the facility, so where is he? Then word starts to leak out. The Raiders are thinking about reprimanding him, which I think is appropriate. Because think about if you did that at your job, you're probably getting reprimanded. So it comes down to, what are you going to reprimand him? Are you going to fine him? Are you going to suspend him? If you suspend him, he stands to lose close to $30 million. And it's already come out that the Raiders are planning to go into their game Monday night against Denver without Antonio Brown. Whether he's suspended or he's inactive or he just plain doesn't show up. They're planning on not using him at all. And that's really sad because he was supposed to be, a big piece for this team. And to not have him week one against a Denver defense that I really think is going to stun a lot of people and I really think has a chance to be the best defense in the league this year, it's going to be very tough for Oakland. So that's what happened today. But that's just one big piece of something that's been going on for months. So let's rewind the clock back a couple months to when Antonio Brown gets traded. He gets traded from Pittsburgh because he's worn out his welcome. Initially, it's reported that he's going to get traded to the Buffalo Bills. But Antonio Brown lets it be known that if he gets traded to the Bills, he is going to retire, which basically nixes the trade. Then a day later, he gets traded to the Oakland Raiders for a bevy of picks, and he reworks his contract to better suit the Raiders for the next couple of years. And at the press conference, Mike Mayock, the man he threatened to punch, is there with his family, and they're all smiling and having a great time. And I remember telling a friend of mine at the time, I said it jokingly that I don't think this relationship will last, and I said I thought John Gruden and Antonio Brown would have a fight with each other by like preseason week 3. I never thought it would get this bad. I said that as a joke, and it almost became half true. So Brown gets traded, and he's a Raider, and things are quiet for a while. And we get closer to OTAs and teams working out, and suddenly word starts to leak, hey, Antonio Brown's not at practice. Why isn't he at practice? His feet are hurt. Why are his feet hurt? Nobody knows. Nobody can answer that question for a couple days. And it becomes a hot topic. Well, what's wrong with his feet? What's bothering him? Then it gets leaked he has frostbite from from some kind of training or healing regimen. I'm forgetting the word. Cryotherapy. That's what it was. It was some kind of cryotherapy thing that a lot of athletes are doing. Anyway, he apparently got frostbite. Very severe frostbite from it. And that's one thing. You know what? That's one thing. He's not at practice because he's hurt. Okay. That's fair. We'll all acquiesce on that. Then after that, after he starts to heal and he starts to come back around, then it turned into the helmet saga, which was Antonio Brown knows he has to get a new helmet. He's worn the same exact helmet for a number of years in the league and played with only that helmet. Well, that helmet is no longer up to safety standards. He has to get a new one, and he's not happy with that. And he lets it be known constantly to everyone. And I remember the reports when that story first broke, and people were very much questioning him. Why is he so caught up on this helmet? Why is this such a craw for him? Why is this the hill he's willing to die on? And he kept trying to sneak helmets into practice, and that wasn't, the regulation helmet. And he kept getting in trouble for it. Then it became a point to where he's appealing to the NFL to allow him to play with his helmet. He appealed multiple times and still got it shut down. And then it got to a point where he's just not showing up to practice at all. And the Raiders flat out said, we don't know where he's at. In a very stunning admission, they flat out said, we don't know where he's at. And they didn't know for a couple days. And then he would just randomly show up. And that's not conduct that's going to help you, especially coming from your star wide receiver. Because like it or not, for all his antics, Antonio Brown is the best player on the Raiders right now. He is. And that's sad. That the guy who might get $30 million and never play for your team is your best player. That's scary. So the helmet saga went on for weeks and weeks. And it finally ended when general manager Mike Mayock went in front of cameras and said, Antonio Brown is either all in or he's all out with this team. And a couple days later, Brown showed up. And we all thought, all right, the drama's, gonna subside a bit. We're gonna work things out. Season's about to start. Once the season starts, Antonio Brown might chill out. That's what we all thought. Until this past Monday, when Antonio Brown posted a fine letter, a letter showing that he got fined for missing time away from the team. And he went on this long rant about it on social media. And that's what caused this whole altercation with Mike Mayock the other day, where he threatened to assault Mike Mayock. Was Mike Mayock wasn't happy that he went on this rant online, posting the letter about the fine. And now we're back to the present. After all that, here we are today, right now. According to Antonio Brown's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who spoke with the NFL Network right before the Bears-Packers game, Antonio Brown is in Oakland. He is in Oakland. And that... Hang on, let me look at my notes here. They asked him, do you think that Antonio Brown is mentally okay? Like, is he okay? That was Rich Eisen's main concern. That was the only question Rich Eisen asked, was Antonio Brown okay? And Drew Rosenhaus said, yes, he is 100% okay. And I'm not sure if I completely buy that, because he's the agent, he's not Brown. I'll believe it when Brown says it, but take it for what you will. And Drew Rosenhaus also went on to say that he truly believes that Brown wants to be a Raider, despite every single thing that Brown has done up to this point. And it's like I said, it's gotten to the point where I don't think Antonio Brown is going to play for the Raiders. I truly do not believe he will suit up and play a single down. Because Mike Mayock is a stubborn person. If anybody has watched him on NFL Network, you know he's a stubborn person. And he has proven to be that in the couple months he's been on the job in Oakland. John Gruden is a stubborn person. And guess what? Antonio Brown seems to be a very stubborn individual. So it looks like this situation is just heading to complete disarray before it ever got started. Now, I thought the marriage wouldn't last, but I thought it would at least last a year. They wouldn't be happy, but, they work with it for a while. And now it becomes down to, I think Brown is going to not play. The question is, do you think he might play for another team? Is there a chance another team might trade for him? I saw a lot of people on Twitter say, it would be crazy if the Patriots traded a 7th round pick for him. I'm like, that's something Bill Belichick would do. He would basically get a loan out for Antonio Brown for a year, win a Super Bowl with him, and then dump him. That's something he would do. I don't know where the Raiders and Brown go from here. As of right now, there has not been a definitive statement by the Raiders if they're going to suspend him, if they're going to fine him, what they're going to do. All we can do now is really wait and see what happens. And I guess keep an eye on social media, because in all likelihood, Antonio Brown's going to post something on there that's going to set the NFL world on fire again. But I do think this is important. I really hope Antonio Brown's okay. Like, as a person. Like, I really want somebody to, like, really check on him. Not just as, are you good to play? Like, are you okay, man? Kind of thing. Because he doesn't seem okay. I'm not a mental health professional, nor do I pretend to be. But I really hope the young man's okay. Because that's what's most important here. So we'll keep you updated when news develops, but as of right now, we do not know where this story's going to go. So, in lighter news, we're going to move on to a preview of the rest of Week 1, where we're going to preview every single game on the calendar, starting with the 1 o'clock games, for you Eastern time zone people like me. And how we're going to do this is we're going to go through each game, and I'm going to give you anywhere from 4 to 6 things to look for in the game. Not for each team, but just the game in general. And I want you to pay close attention, because I'm going to go through every game, but there are 3 games in the schedule that I've earmarked to be what I think the most entertaining games of the weekend. And when we get to them, I'll tell you what they are, and I'll also drop in some tidbits about who I think are going to win divisions during this process. And then once we get through all this, I'm going to reveal who I think is going to be in the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl this year. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with the Bills at the Jets, Week 1. This is a very interesting matchup of sophomore quarterbacks who look to be slightly better. The number one thing for this game, I think, Le'Veon Bell. He's going to have a good season. He had a year off to really rest and relax and recoup, and now he gets to come in and be the bell cow for a maturing quarterback who looks to probably rely on him. And I wouldn't be stunned if Le'Veon Bell leads the league in rushing yards. They're going to rely on him heavily, and I think he's going to have a really great year. I think Sam Darnold's really going to benefit from having a player like Le'Veon Bell back there who he can really rely on in both rushing and passing, be a nice little safety valve for him. And they really re-upped the receiving core in the Jets with Robbie Anderson and I think one other player. But I just really like the Jets. I don't know what Adam Gase is going to do. Every press conference I watch with him, I'm not sure what's up with that man. But he knows how to talk quarterback, so I guess that works. I really like Sam Darnold, and I think the Jets could win probably 8 or more games this year. I really like the Jets this year. And then looking at the Bills, their defense could be interesting. They re-upped their receiving core. They got Cole Beasley from Dallas and a couple other wide receivers to really help Josh Allen. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't high on Josh Allen when he came out in the draft. I thought he was not an accurate quarterback and all he could do was throw deep. I was stunned watching him play last year. I didn't know he was mobile like that. I didn't know he could run like that. I was really stunned watching that. And I'm like, wow, good for you, kid. And I really think the maturation of both Darnold and Josh Allen will be key for both their teams, like in every team. But for this game, I really think that the Jets are probably going to win it. I just think the Jets are going to be a better team than the Bills this year. I think the Bills are probably looking down the barrel of another 6-win season. Which, hey, you're still building. Moving on from the Bills and the Jets. Going from Bills and Jets to Chiefs and Jags. Yeah, how about that segue? Now these two teams played last year, and it was a bit of a closer game. The Jags, I wouldn't say they held the Chiefs in check because the Chiefs won the game, but they kind of limited what the Chiefs wanted to do offensively. And I really think that's what's going to happen again this year, is that the Jags defense is going to be really good, and they're really going to benefit from having Nick Foles at quarterback. Even though they really don't have anybody to throw to, I do not believe in their wide receiver core. I think it's really bad, and I think Leonard Fournette is probably on his way out in that team. Tom Coughlin is really trying to get people to march to the beat of his drum, and it sounds like Leonard Fournette has not been buying in. And I really think he's on his way out. But here's the thing for you. At least one team in 15 out of the last 16 seasons has gone from worst to first in their division. The Jags finished worst in their division last year. And as bad as the AFC South is, I think the Jags could do it. I think they could. Now, when I say do it, I mean go 8-8, and that's probably good enough to win your division. That's what I'm talking about. I don't believe in their offense. They really don't have anybody to throw to, and their defense looks really great. If that's good enough to win your division, then go at it. But on the opposite side of the field, you have the reigning NFL MVP and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, who, believe it or not, somehow only got scarier in the offseason. They added Shady McCoy just the other day to reunite him with Andy Reid because, why not make them scarier? They added a couple wide receivers in the draft when it was up in the air whether Tyreek Hill would play again or not. So you only just reloaded the offense. This team could literally hang 50 on anybody. They could. And the only thing that can stop them is the Patriots, if we're being honest. I still have some concerns about their defense, but when you have an offense like Patrick Mahomes, that's not really that big of a deal because he can literally score at will. I don't know if he's going to have a 50-touchdown, 5,000-yard season again. I doubt that he will, but he's still going to have a very, very good productive season and is the odds-on favorite to win the MVP again. That kid is amazing to watch. I know everybody's beaten that to death, but he truly is amazing to watch. For this one, I've got the Chiefs winning. Even though it's in Jacksonville, I've got the Chiefs winning. Like I said, I think the Jags got a real shot at winning their division, but Chiefs win this one. Next game up, Falcons and Vikings. This game is going to be really good. It's not one of my 3 ones to watch this weekend, but it's still going to be really, really good. The Vikings got a new offensive coordinator in Gary Kubiak, who is more in line with what head coach Zimmer wants. He wants to be a run team. And if you got Gary Kubiak and you like to run the ball, guess what? You're going to run the ball. You're going to run the ball and you're going to do a lot of play action and bootlegs and all that. And I really think that could work with Minnesota. Dalvin Cook's a phenomenal running back, and I think he's going to have a really good year this year. And I think Kirk Cousins can really benefit from an offensive scheme like Gary Kubiak. Now, the main problem with Minnesota last year was their offensive line was atrocious. It was bad. I don't know if they've really fixed it enough. We're going to see this year, but I think Minnesota is in line for a real bounce-back season, and I actually have them winning the NFC North. I have them outlasting every other team that suddenly looks to be a defensive slugfest in that division. I got the Vikings winning their division. And, I mean, on paper, they have a very talented team. Their wide receivers are great. Their running back is great. I love Kirk Cousins, all right? I'm going to be real. I love Cousins. Kirk Cousins gets a lot of flack from a lot of people, but I really think he's a good quarterback. His record against winning teams is really bad, but I think he's a good quarterback. And their defense is great too. There's a lot to love there. Then on the other side of the field, you got the Falcons, who are coming off a very disappointing season in their own right. Last year, a lot of people had them as a very trendy Super Bowl pick. And they just got demolished by injuries from the word go. It really got hard to watch at times, the way guys were getting hurt. I felt bad. It was almost like they got cursed or something. But the Falcons look to be... There's a lot of talk that the Falcons are going to have a real bounce back year, that they're going to look like they did 2 years ago when they won like 11 games and they made it to the divisional round. And they have hopes of getting back to the Super Bowl. And with Matt Ryan, you got to believe that they got a chance. Now, I've been hearing a lot of talk that Dan Quinn might be on the hot seat, and I kind of believe a little bit of that talk, because he fired a bunch of coordinators last year at the end of last season, and that's usually what happens right before a head coach gets fired, is that coordinators get chopped first, and then another bad season happens, and then the head coach goes. So if the Falcons fall into another 6-win season, I think Dan Quinn might be on the hot seat. But I think the Falcons are going to have more of a bounce-back season, and the NFC South is going to be very competitive this year. Very, very competitive, and it's going to come down to the last week of the season. It's going to be really fun to watch. But in this one, I got the Vikings winning, probably maybe by a touchdown or two. I'm a firm believer in Gary Kubiak and that offense. If Gary Kubiak can get Dalvin Cook working, and Kirk Cousins can feed off that and start working with those wide receivers, I really think the Vikings can be special. That offense is going to be potent this year, I think. All right, moving on. We got our first major game to watch this weekend. Rams at Panthers. The defending NFC champion Los Angeles Rams going all the way to Carolina to take on Cam Newton. That sounds fantastic. In all honesty, that sounds fantastic. The last time we saw the Rams, they were getting pushed off the field by a celebrating Patriots at the end of the Super Bowl. The Rams' offense looked out of whack, and Jared Goff looked like he was too small for the moment. Now, a couple months later, Jared Goff's got a brand new contract, and we're going to see if it's same old for the Rams. Are they just going to come out and be like their old selves? Or are we still going to see issues? I really think the Rams are going to probably be in the NFC Championship game at the end of the year. Notice I didn't say Super Bowl, just NFC Championship game. I really like the Rams. I'm in love with Sean McVay. I think he's an absolute genius. And no matter what, I think that team probably wins at least 11 to 12 games this year. They're just so good, and they've just figured out what to do. And they can just adjust to any situation. I just have complete and utter faith in Sean McVay and what he's doing. So then you move on from the Rams to look at their opponent, the Panthers. And I don't know if you've heard this one before, but the Panthers started 6-1 last year before everything fell apart. And I think they could have a recipe to be successful early on again this year. I'm in love with their offensive line and defensive line. I really like their defense in general. I'm hearing a lot of good things about their wide receiver core. And I've always loved Cam Newton as a quarterback. But I don't know if Cam Newton's 100% healthy. Remember, he had that ankle injury a few weeks ago, and there was a doubt on whether he would play in the opening game. So we don't know if he's truly 100% healthy. Plus his shoulder that he was rehabbing during the entire offseason. We'll get to see that finally. I really think this is going to be a very down-to-the-wire, probably a defensive stop wins the game kind of game. I really think this game is going to be the highlight of the 1 o'clock showcase of games for the NFL. And I'm going to take the Rams in it. I'll take the Rams in it. Even though I feel like Carolina could also win it. I'm going to take the Rams. I think it's going to be a very close and heated game, but I think it's going to follow the Rams in the end. Let's say Aaron Donald strip sacks Cam Newton to win the game. It'll be something like that, I think. All right, moving on. We got Ravens and Dolphins going from a great game in Rams Panthers to probably the worst game of the weekend. Ravens and Dolphins. Ravens playoff team last year, ran the ball a whole bunch. I think the main concern on everybody's mind is how much are you going to run Lamar this season? Lamar Jackson, the Ravens quarterback. And I want Lamar to have a long and healthy career. I really like Lamar Jackson. I think he's fun to watch. He's electric. I don't want him getting hurt a lot. So that means he shouldn't be running the ball 20 times a game like he was last year. And they drafted a wide receiver in the first round to really help the Ravens out. And I think the Ravens are going to be solid this year. That whole AFC North looks good, except for the Bengals. Poor Bengals. And I really like the Ravens. They did lose a little bit of defensive talent, but I think they'll be able to manage. But I'm just concerned at what the offense is going to look like and how much they're going to work Lamar. I think we're going to get a bit of a taste of that, but we really won't know until we get closer to the middle part of the season. The Dolphins, on the other hand, their opponent, I think we're looking at the worst team in the NFL this year. If you had to have a safe bet for the team that's probably going to have the first overall pick next year, it's the Dolphins. Their roster is depleted after people either leaving, getting cut, or traded. They lost arguably their best player in Laramie Tunsil in a trade with the Houston Texans last weekend for 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and some players. They also lost Kenny Stills in that trade, one of their wide receivers. And it's not looking good for Miami. If you're hoping for that team to be good this year, I've got some bad news for you. That team looks bad. I think right now their best player is Kenyon Drake, the running back. Ryan Fitzpatrick is your starter, and he might probably get benched by like week 8. Tend to be how Fitzpatrick seasons go, and then Josh Rosen comes in, and that poor kid has been failed from the word go. I liked Rosen, but man, that poor kid has the worst luck, doesn't he? He gets traded to a team, and you think he finally has a fresh start, and they're going all in on tanking to get a quarterback. These next year to 2 years in Miami are going to be rough, but if they can play it right, they can really rebuild their team with what they have. And since they got those draft picks from Houston, a team that could go anywhere from like 9-7 to like a 5-win team, it could get really interesting really quick for Miami. But this game is probably going to be a blowout. I hate to tell you, we're probably looking at something like 35 to like 9. This is going to get ugly fast, I think. Like I said, Ravens take this one big. The only game I'm going to absolutely guarantee on this list, Ravens win this one. Moving on from Ravens-Dolphins to Washington at Philly. This is a game that's also probably going to get very ugly very fast. I am not a believer in Washington right now. That whole organization does not seem to be in a good place, and I think Jay Gruden is very much on the hot seat right at this moment. I think that guy is probably, if Washington comes out of the gate and struggles and drops a couple games early, I think Jay Gruden could probably lose his job. That whole front office is not good, and it's been not good for a while. And there's the whole issue with the left tackle. He's holding out. He wants more money, and it seemed like an unsolvable situation. But now it sounds like he's going to come back and play, according to some players. They think he might come back and play. We don't know yet. Right now, Washington's going to start Case Keenum. I really feel like Dwayne Haskins is probably going to take the job over closer towards the middle of the year, maybe later in the season. But right now it seems like he's not ready. He seemed to get better as the preseason went along, but he's not quite there yet. Say what you will about Washington. The running backs seem interesting. Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson, who still has it. Old man Peterson still has it. I really think Washington's about to get waxed by Philly. It's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast. Because Philadelphia is a good team. They have talent across the board, and I think Carson Wentz is finally going to be fully 100% recovered from his ACL injury. I'm one of those people that believes that it really takes a year for a guy to bounce back, and it's been a year, so I think Wentz is going to be a lot better. I think the Eagles return closer to what they were during the Super Bowl run. I really think that team's probably going to rip off 11 wins this year and win the division again, win the NFC East. And I got the Eagles big in this one. Probably by 15 points, probably. It's going to get ugly early and quick, I think. I'm a Cowboy fan, so it hurts to say Philly is good, but Philly is a great team. Their front office is amazing, and their head coach is impeccable. They've got a really good situation in Philadelphia. Moving on from Washington and Philly, you go to the Titans at the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are going to be such an interesting team to watch this year. I have been dying to watch this team play. The moment they traded for Odell Beckham, I became ecstatic to watch this team play. And I know it feels like such an overhyped narrative at this point, but that team looks so good. It looks so good. And for a city like Cleveland, man, they deserve this. They deserve a team that's going to win like 11 games and win the division and have a little bit of a playoff run. They deserve it, man. They really do. That poor city's been through hell. And we're gonna see early on how good the Browns are, not just in this game, but they got a slew of primetime games early on in the season. They might struggle a bit, but I really think that team's going to win the division this year. I like them better than the Steelers, and I like them more than the Ravens. I really like the Browns. The Titans, on the other hand, feel like such a wishy-washy team. I just when you feel like they're down and out, they'll pull off a win against a big-time team on the road, and it just always feels so weird watching Tennessee play. They need to decide what they're going to do with Marcus Mariota because his contract's coming up, and they have a capable backup in Ryan Tannehill there. So if Marcus Mariota starts, not playing well, they could pull him. They could easily pull him and put in Tannehill. And Tennessee really needs to decide soon what they're going to do. And Tampa Bay is in the same situation with Jameis Winston. These teams need to decide what they're going to do with these quarterbacks because they have failed to take the next step. And time's running out. But I've got the Browns in this one. An uncertain future for Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. Moving on to the 4 p.m. games. Bengals at Seahawks. Seahawks are going to be a lot like they were last year. Run first and play defense. They got Jadeveon Clowney, which is great, which took them from a team that's probably going to float around 9 wins to a team that could really make a lot of noise and be scary if they make it to the playoffs. That team is scary now with Jadeveon. And I really like the Seahawks. I'm going to take them big in this game. A.J. Green for the Bengals is going to be out for the first couple weeks. So we're going to see how efficient they'll be on offense. I'm just not sure. The Bengals do not look good. They look like a 4-win team this year. They do not look good. I got the Seahawks big in that one. We're going to run through a couple of these games a bit quicker here. Colts at the Chargers. Man, that Andrew Luck news hit hard, huh? I hope he finds happiness, but it seems like the Colts really do believe in Jacoby Brissett to be their backup. They signed him to that big extension. But the Colts have a really great team around Jacoby. They do. They have a very talented roster. Their head coach is really good in Frank Reich, and their front office is amazing. That being said, I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I think the Chargers can still win without Melvin Gordon. And even if Melvin Gordon holds out, I really think they could still win a bunch of games this year. It's becoming a now or never situation for Phillip Rivers. I don't think if it happens in the next year or two, he's never going to win a Super Bowl. But I've got the Chargers in this one. Then the 49ers at the Bucks. This feels like a toss-up game. I'm going to take the 49ers in this one. It'll be interesting to see how Jimmy Garoppolo looks. I don't trust any of their wide receivers at all in San Francisco. And the Bucks, I don't trust Jameis Winston. I don't. It'll be interesting to see what Bruce Arians does with his quarterback and how that offense looks. I just do not trust Jameis Winston at all. So I got the 49ers in that one, but like I said, I feel like that's a coin flip game. Now I got my second of the most watched games here in the 4 o'clock time slot, the game that I feel like you should be watching. Lions at Cardinals. Now I know. Now, don't turn off just yet. Don't turn off just yet. I think this could be interesting because it's a contrast of styles. You got the Lions, who had a top 10 defense last year, even though they won only 6 games. They had a top 10 defense versus the number 1 overall pick, Kyler Murray, and a brand new offense in Arizona. They're going to be going air raid. It's going to look a lot like college football, and odds are they're probably going to score a lot of points. But I really think that contrasting styles can make matchups, and I feel like a hard-nosed defense and a team that likes to run the ball in Detroit versus a team that's going to air it out and throw it every chance they get, I think that could be a very entertaining matchup. I'll take the Lions in this one, but I just want you guys to know I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. And Cliff Kingsbury coached at Texas Tech, which is in the same conference as the Longhorns. So Kingsbury knows how to coach an offense. I watched him for years. That man knows how to score points. I don't know if it can translate to the NFL, but if he can just somehow get his schemes to work, I really think they could put up points. Maybe not this year, but I think a successful season for the Cardinals would be to make your offense watchable, because it was unwatchable last year. If I can watch your team and not feel like putting my head in the oven, I think that's a win. But I got the Lions in this one. I always take defense. I'll always take defense. Lions in this one, but should be an interesting game. Then we got Giants at Cowboys. I think the Giants are a gigantic dumpster fire on every level. Their best quarterback is currently sitting on the bench in David Jones. It's not even a debate anymore. I don't care what anybody says. And yeah, that's about it for the Giants. I think if the Giants come out and struggle and drop, I don't know, maybe like 4 out of their first 5, I think we could see Daniel Jones early. I really do. Fans are already clamoring for him, so it's just a matter of time. And I feel bad for their head coach, Pat Shurmur. He feels like he doesn't have a lot of control in that organization, and he's just taking what the owner tells him to do, and that's sad. You never want to see that. But for the Cowboys, on their end, Zeke signed his mega contract the other day, 6 years, $90 million. So the Cowboys suddenly got better. I don't care what you say about their backup, Tony Pollard. See, I didn't even learn his name because I didn't care about him. Tony Pollard. I heard people say he's the next Alvin Kamara. Stop it. No, he's not. There's a reason why Dallas broke the bank to sign Zeke, because they don't believe in Tony Pollard. See? Still can't get his name right. Zeke's back, and that makes the Cowboys better. I still don't think they'll win a Super Bowl, but the Cowboys are better with Zeke. Another thing to look for in this game would be the Cowboys' new offensive coordinator, former Boise State quarterback Kellen Moore, is in his first year as offensive coordinator. And we're going to see what that is like, because things got very stale under Scott Linehan last year in Dallas, where plays became very predictable. So it'll be interesting to see what Kellen Moore does to really spice things up. And hopefully that could really help Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback. I'm not a denier in Dak Prescott, but I'm also not a believer. He's still got a lot he needs to work on, but I really hope that Kellen Moore could help maximize his potential. But I got the Cowboys in this one. I do not believe in the Giants this year. The Giants are probably going to finish last in the NFC East. And now moving on to the Sunday night game, the last game I think is going to be that is must watch this weekend, the Sunday night game. Pittsburgh at New England. I think that sells it itself. 2 absolute heavyweights in the AFC going head-to-head on Sunday Night Football. Pats are back at it, and it's early in the season when they tend to struggle, so, it might get interesting. But if the Pats lose, it's not that big of a deal, because they're going to be in the Super Bowl anyway. But it'll be interesting because the Pats center, David Andrews, is out for the year with a blood clot issue, which was a big thing earlier this week, I believe. it was a bit of a stunning news to see that. So we're going to see how Bill Belichick can bounce back. But if anybody can do it, it's going to be Bill Belichick. They'll find a way to overcome it. The Josh Gordon being reinstated was big for New England because I had major doubts about their wide receiver core. But adding in Josh Gordon, letting him just go off on teams with Tom Brady, it'll be good to see. And they're the Patriots. There's not a lot to be said about them that you don't already know. They're going to win another 13 games and be in the Super Bowl again. I mean, come on. Then we look at Pittsburgh, which is going to be the first season without Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell for Big Ben, but I think he'll find a way to deal with it. I really do. He's still got Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm trying not to slur here, at wide receiver, who is a tremendous wide receiver. Juju does not get enough credit for how good he is, in my opinion. And they got a great young running back in James Conner. So I really think on offense, I think they'll be okay. On defense, I think they're going to put things together and really be solid. And they're probably going to float around 10 to 11 wins. Just as normal. Mike Tomlin knows how to get out of his team. Get the most out of his team. When they can play up to their competition, but they also tend to play down to their competition with the Steelers. So I have no doubt that they'll be out there and ready to go toe-to-toe with the Patriots and come down to the fourth quarter. That being said, I'm going to take the Pats. I never bet against New England. There are two things in football. You never bet against New England, and you never bet against Alabama. Those are my two rules. Anyway, I got the Pats winning a back-and-forth heavyweight showdown on Sunday Night Football. And then moving over to Monday night, since it's the first week of the season, we got two games. The first game is going to be Houston at New Orleans. The Houston Texans at New Orleans Saints. I'm going to go Saints in this one. I really think they are their winner Super Bowl this season, or Drew Brees is just going to, not win another one. I think it either has to happen this season or it's not going to happen again. Because time is running out here for Drew Brees, in my opinion. Not a lot happened with, the Saints in the offseason. We just know that they really were stewing at the way the season ended last year when they got screwed in the final minutes of the NFC Championship game, which they did, even though they also had plenty of chances to win that game. So they're really out here just looking to go back and win it all this year. On the other side, you got the Texans, who made the buttload of trades last weekend, got rid of Jadeveon Clowney, but also got left tackle Laramie Tunsil, which is a tremendous get because they have no protection for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league the last few years, and he's finally got help, and that's great. I still don't like the Texans' rest of their offensive line. I still think they're going to get Deshaun hurt, but I have a lot of faith in Laramie Tunsil, and I hope he can protect Deshaun because Deshaun's a tremendous athlete, and it's better for the league when he's out there making plays. We can all agree on that. Either way, I've got New Orleans winning probably by a touchdown or two. I don't really believe in the Texans' defense. I think Drew Brees and Sean Payton are going to carve them up good, especially in the second half. Probably get tricky like he tends to do, but I got the Saints picking that one. And the last game on our schedule, Monday night, kicking off at about 10:30, Broncos at Raiders. We already talked at length about Antonio Brown not being there, and it's going to really hurt the Raiders' offense. And that is going to really, really hurt going up against a defense that I truly believe in, and the Broncos, now that they have Vic Fangio as their head coach. Vic Fangio, if you don't know, was the Bears' defensive coordinator last year, and they were the best defense in the league. So I think now going to Denver and taking over talent like Von Miller and Chubb is really just going to take it to a whole nother level. And it's just going to be scary. If you're playing quarterback in the AFC West, you should be afraid right now. That being said, I think this game speaks for itself. I got the Broncos winning a very one-sided fight from the word go against the Raiders. I don't really believe in Joe Flacco as the quarterback for the Broncos, but that team might go anywhere from 7-9 to 9-7. It'll be interesting to watch them. So that's all the games for this weekend. hopefully that's a fair enough preview for you all for Week 1. And like I promised, my Super Bowl pick, I've got New Orleans beating New England in the Super Bowl this year. That's going to be my pick. I got New Orleans beating the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and I got the Pats once again beating the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. So, that's the end of the show for this week. Next week we're going to go for our full schedule. I know there's only one show this week, but we're looking to do 2 shows a week. A show posted every Wednesday and Friday. Wednesday's show is going to be recapping most of what happened during Week 1 and any major news, and then a preview for the Thursday night game. And then Friday's show is going to be a lot like what this show was, a recap of Thursday night, recap of any major news since the last show, and then preview of Week 1. So that's it for the first episode of the NFLandU podcast. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all again next time. Goodbye.